and welcome to this Aerotime interview as part of our special week dedicated to pilots. My name is Richard Stevenson and I'm the Chief Executive of Aerotime. I'm delighted to be here today to interview Deborah Thomas from easyJet. During this special week in which we mark International Pilots Day, Aerotime will be publishing a number of interviews with captains and first officers, and we'll be bringing you some special reports and features as we take a deeper look into the role of pilots in our world today. Deborah is an Airbus A320 pilot with easyJet who has significant experience working across the aviation and aerospace sectors, with a strong interest in modelling and simulation, systems engineering, aeronautics, and data science. Earlier in her career, she spent time as a software engineer at Airbus. She's currently on secondment to FlyZero, a project run by the Airspace Technology Institute and backed by the UK government. The project brings together experts from the UK industry and academia with a vision to realise zero carbon emission commercial flight by the end of the decade. Debbie graduated from Keele University with a BSc in Maths and Astrophysics, and she has recently returned to her studies, enrolling on a Masters of Science course in Computer Science and Data Analytics at the University of York. Debbie, thanks so much for joining us here on Aerotime today. So Debbie, I want to start by going right back to the beginning and asking you what got you into aviation and aerospace in the first place. I know that you started your career at Airbus as a software engineer. So were you one of those people who just caught that flying bug really early, or did you fall into it later in life?
Well, yeah, Airbus wasn't the start of my love of flying. So I started when I was 14. When I used to go up to the local flying club with my dad. He was having lessons a bit later in life, and I used to go with him and join him on some of his flying lessons, and I loved it. So I was lucky enough to be able to have some flying lessons at that time as well, and I went on to do my private pilot's license at that time and did that when I was 17. And at that point I'd got the bug, so I wanted to stay in aviation for my career, and followed that route through my education through university. So I wanted to do a maths and physics type of degree because I knew that would help with flying. Astrophysics sounded really interesting, so I went with that course. And yeah, after university, I looked into going commercial flying because that was my ambition at the time. It was 2000 when I graduated. So when I left university, I applied for all of the scholarships that were going on at the time. And yeah, about a year of that, and then 9/11 happened, and I hadn't secured a fully funded scholarship by then. So yeah, that path was sort of cut short at that time. So I had to go back to the drawing board and think about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So because I'd done the maths and physics background, I applied to every job that I could think of at the time that could use that skill, such as the Met Office and DERA and BAE Systems. And one company, Hunting Engineering, took me on their graduate scheme. And on that scheme, I learned coding. And then a job in modelling and simulation came up at Airbus in Bristol. So I applied for that and was lucky enough to get it. And that was back in 2002. And then I continued with Airbus for the next sort of 3 or 4 years. And then I went to work on a Boeing project on the 787, doing the airborne software for the landing gear health monitoring system, which was an amazing project to be working on actual code that was going to fly. And then after that, I came back to Airbus as a contractor and worked on many projects there, which was really interesting, on the avionics test rigs, doing modelling and simulation. And then I worked on a research project into the more electric aircraft. So we were looking at bleedless architectures for the whole aircraft. So we're creating power distribution of the whole aircraft. And at that point, I saw a job advert with easyJet on the Amy Johnson initiative. And I was 37 then, and I thought, is it too late? Is it too late to have another go? And I thought, no, it's not. So I went for it. And when I started looking into how I was going to get my ATPL, I realised that there was a distance learning ground school down the road from me. So I went along and signed up for the course, and thought I'd just see how I got on with all the exams, the 14 exams you've got to do. And that went well. So I did that alongside my job. I have 2 children as well. So my daughter was going to school, and I was thinking I'd have a bit more time in my day to do a bit of studying. So I did the distance learning, and then started looking at flying schools where I could do my CPL and IR, because I'd already done a lot of hours when I was younger with the private flying. So I went to Gloucester and asked if they could fit in my flying in school drop off and pick up hours, and they said yes. So I did it modular route, very flexible, and it made it possible for me to get my license. That stage I wasn't really sure whether I'd go commercial flying or whether it would be as an instructor, because it was very unknown whether I'd get a job within the airlines. But finished all my courses, and at that point the Amy Johnson Initiative was still being advertised, and they'd started a scheme where they were taking on modular students with the type rating, and I applied and got it, and I was thrilled to join easyJet, and that was 2.5 years ago.
What a great story. I mean, do you know any other pilots that have that kind of rich diversity in terms of their route to the cockpit? Because you've done engineering, you've done modeling, you've done all sorts of things. So, I mean, you must be pretty unique.
Yeah, I think it is. It's quite rare to have as much experience in engineering before the flying. I do fly with people that have been engineers in the past, but they maybe made the change a bit earlier on in their career. So I left it a bit later. But yeah, I do fly with people who've worked for some of the engineering companies. But there's such a diverse range of pilots, from military to the ab initio integrated route that come in, and also modular students as well.
And tell me, you mentioned Gloucester. Was that the Cotswolds Airport?
That was Aeros at Gloucester.
I remember, yeah. So I flew out of the Cotswolds Airport a few times, and once in an adapted aerobatic Cessna 152. And I had a headache for 3 days after that trip. I think my instructor was trying to show me just how versatile this aircraft was, and I realized very quickly that my head wasn't quite as versatile as the aircraft was. But it was a fascinating experience, and it was a great flight, but it took a bit of getting over. So Debbie, one of the reasons we were really keen to talk to you today was because of your current role with FlyZero, which we should get on and talk about. Because my understanding is that you actually volunteered for this secondment that you're currently on with FlyZero. Now, usually companies are looking for volunteers to go and do these things and take on these secondments, but with you, it was the other way around. And you told easyJet that you had heard about this opportunity and you really wanted to do it. And easyJet were incredibly supportive of you doing so and wanted to try and make that happen. So tell us a bit more about how that process worked, what happened, and why was easyJet so supportive? Because how does this align with the airline and the focuses of the airline at the moment?
So yeah, what happened was with lockdown last year, back in March, I suddenly had a lot of time on my hands. So I was looking at how I could use some of my skills in engineering to help, and what I could do with my time usefully. So on our easyJet sort of advertising, internal advertising, there was a Zero E, the Airbus Zero E project, and easyJet were involved in it. And they were saying that there was going to be workshops. So I approached our head of flight operations, David Morgan, and asked him if I could be involved. I sent him my CV and said that I'd love to be involved in some way. And he was really encouraging with that and invited me along. So I got involved with that and the sustainability team within easyJet. And around the same time, shortly after, I saw the FlyZero project was advertised online. So I read about it and just thought it was a brilliant opportunity. And they were looking for secondees to work on the project. So I approached easyJet again, spoke to David and said, would this be something that easyJet would allow me to do? And he was all for it. Yeah, they pushed it through. It was quite small, short time scales. So yeah, we didn't have much time to get it all turned around, but we did it, and I started in February this year. And so much as aligning with easyJet, I think with the involvement with Airbus and Wright Electric and this FlyZero project, easyJet need to look at the zero emissions aircraft future to meet the targets, the government and world targets that are around. So it completely aligns with their ambitions as an airline to be zero carbon in the next sort of 10 years time. So this project, FlyZero, is one way of helping the UK industry get there. So they were very encouraging of me to be involved. And the plan is that after the 1 year project, the secondees will go back to the parent companies with expertise in this industry.
So is it really as simple as that? What you're setting out to achieve here, the goals and the objectives, is it's simply zero emissions, 10 years time?
The goal of the project is to set out a roadmap of how UK industry can achieve this within 10 years. So we will be looking at, it's a holistic approach to all the aspects of the engineering involved in achieving this. So we're looking at it from industrial, the infrastructure required for these new technologies, to the manufacturing, to the design, and the airlines, airports and airspace that they're going to be embedded within in the future. So it's a whole holistic view to making this happen.
So I think it's fair to say that the aviation industry in recent years especially has had a much greater focus on sustainability, and progress has definitely been made. But is zero carbon emission aviation a realistic goal by the end of the decade?
That's a good question. I believe with this project, with FlyZero, we will make really good headway into making that a realistic achievement. We have nearly 90 experts in the industry from all of the different areas, manufacturing, industrial, airlines and airports and airspace, looking into it. So I do believe that this project can help make this a reality.
Brilliant. I mean, it sounds amazing, and you've talked about the diversity of this project already, and it really sounds like the A to Z of getting to that sort of zero carbon goal. You've talked about the approach, manufacturing demands, market opportunity, concept aircrafts, propulsions, policies, all sorts of different things. But tell us a little about what is it that you bring to this project? What is your specialism that you're bringing to this project, and why is your role in it so important?
So with this project, I bring to it my experience in modelling and simulation in aviation from the past. So I come to it as aircraft modeller in the aircraft integration team. So we are working with the other teams within the project. We'll be looking at the whole aircraft, and there'll be other teams looking at specific parts of it, such as propulsion, sustainability, airframe, commercial. So I will be creating mathematical simulations of the concepts and the technologies we'll be using so that we can assess the impact from a whole aircraft point of view. And also my flying experience. So being an operational pilot, I wanted to be involved because I can give that different view of actually operating the aircraft day to day in airspace as it stands today. And I've also, we've been creating a pilot forum of different pilots from across the industry to help us with this topic as well, so we can get an even wider view from airline operations.
I mean, it sounds like this project was, I mean, almost specially made for you, for your background, for your experience, I mean, even going right back to what you studied at university, you know, back in the day, but also what you're studying at university today, and you bring that wide range of skills. It's really interesting, though, to think about the actual role of the pilot, because you think about these kind of projects and you think about those very, you know, clever, sensible people thinking about all of the things, I guess, you know, outside of the cockpit, but actually you bring that pilot experience. Why is that so important to a job like this?
I think you need to get that perspective of actually operating the aircraft on a project like this, because you can look at things slightly different. And yeah, I think if you're doing a research project in isolation, away from the actual operations, you could come out with an answer that's not workable within a real operation. So I think, yeah, to have that perspective is really important.
So FlyZero is aiming to shape the future of global aviation. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And that's very much with the UK at the forefront of sustainable flight in design, manufacture, technology and skills. It's clearly a hugely ambitious project with government backing. But is the industry itself doing enough to support it? And you know, is the wider industry doing enough to become more sustainable in the future?
Well, I think I agree. Yes, the industry completely needs to come on board with this topic now, and it's becoming more and more important with every year that goes by. But with our team, we have got industrial backing from it, and it wouldn't be possible to bring the team of experts together without the backing of those industrial partners. So we've got people from Airbus, Rolls-Royce, GKN, Spirit, GE, amongst airline and airport people. So I think with that, it shows the commitment that industry's got to work together on this topic and move it forward. And we're also inviting other organisations to work with us on a collaboration sort of approach, so we can get different inputs from organisations in that way, as well as the secondment opportunities.
So are there still wider opportunities for, you know, more people like you to get involved with this project? And if so, how can they do that?
Well, as I said earlier, the pilot forum that we're putting together is trying to engage with pilots on from a wider breadth of experience. So there is that mechanism. So we'll be putting together discussion groups on different topics that come up throughout the project, and also surveys that's going to go out to a wider audience to get an appreciation for perceptions of these technologies.
So, Debbie, one of the reasons that we are speaking to a number of pilots this week is because it's the week where we mark International Pilots Day. So it would be remiss of me not to ask you more about your actual flying career. You mentioned the A320. You know, what other aircraft have you flown, and what aircraft haven't you flown but that you want to fly in the future?
So yeah, I'm currently on the A320 family. I've flown in the past the Piper PA-28, that's what I did my private pilot's license on, and also the DA-42, the Diamond DA-42, which is what I did my my multi-engined instrument rating on. But then shortly after that, getting the role at Airbus and going straight onto the at easyJet and going straight onto the Airbus. So I'm still fairly new to the industry. It's only 2.5 years, so I'm still really enjoying flying the Airbus. So I'm not keen to change anytime soon. But in terms of future aircraft, I'd love to fly a FlyZero new concept aircraft that comes out in 10 years' time. That would be absolutely amazing.
Well, I'm sure if anyone's perfectly placed to fly that aircraft as soon as it comes out, it sounds like it's going to be you. So, in 10 years' time, when that happens, give us a call, and we'll come and cover it, because it will be a really exciting time, and it's something that matters an awful lot to everyone at Aerotime. So yeah, I mean, keep us posted on that. But tell us, what's your favourite story from the cockpit?
My favourite story, I would have to say my base training at easyJet. That was an amazing day. Once going through the type rating, being in the full flight simulators is a very intense time. And then you go and actually get your hands on the real aircraft for the first time. You go up with about 8 or so of your fellow cadets and take it in turns to do 6 takeoff and landings. Without passengers on board, and you get all day just going round and round in circles. But it's quite a thrill to do that for the first time.
There probably aren't many professions where saying something like "you just spend all day going round and round in circles" is a good thing. There's another one for the aviation industry. So Debbie, you've said that you're relatively new to the actual flying industry, but you have a lot of experience in the sector. And if you were to think about, I mean, I'm pretty confident I know what your answer to this question is going to be, but if you were to think about the industry and you were to think about how you wanted to change the industry, so that when you look back in 10 years' time, you could see that one major change has happened, what would that be?
Well, it would definitely be that it's zero carbon emissions. I think it needs to happen now in the aviation industry, and it would be a wonderful thing for us to achieve zero carbon flying, to make it a sustainable future.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by your answer to that question. But we're asking every pilot the same question this week. Like, what do you want to see change in this industry? Because it is such a dynamic industry, and there are lots of people who are working within the industry to change so many different things that it seems like a very sensible question to ask, but a great answer. And again, we're very much looking forward to that happening. One of the other questions we're asking is, what's the advice that you would give to somebody today who really wants to get into the aviation sector?
I would definitely say perseverance. And being flexible, I guess, because you don't know what's going to happen, what's around the corner. But you have to keep your eye on the goal and just be flexible with how you approach it, and be positive. And also, something with me during my experience is mentors within the industry. There's a lot of people that are willing to help and give advice, who've been there before and done it. And that's really invaluable. So seeking mentorship is really important.
And have you had notable mentors and people that have inspired you to really pursue your career?
Definitely, there's been a few people along the path. Yeah, one of the flying instructors when I was doing my CPLIR was amazing, Andrew Sinclair, and also. It was actually one commercial pilot who, Philip Tucker, his name was, and he was really, really supportive along the route when I was just starting out, to help me achieve my goal.
It's something that we hear from a lot of pilots, that there have been those very sort of influential people. I don't mean influential in terms of position of power, but just influential in terms of their career and their career development. And it feels as if aviation is a very welcoming sector. It's a welcoming industry, and it's somewhere where especially pilots can get a lot of support from people. So your message of perseverance is very clear, but there are a lot of people who do find it difficult to get onto the kind of courses that you've talked about, and perseverance at times can become challenging. But as I say, we've spoken to people this week who have overcome a lot of those barriers from very humble beginnings and with lots of difficulties put in their way. And aviation just seems to be one of those industries where people do persevere, and they do come through, and they do keep going. And once you have the aviation bug, I don't think it ever really goes away. Can you imagine a life without aviation right now?
No, I can't. I love it, and I love it more every day with being involved in it. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, look, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about this amazing project, FlyZero. We're going to be following the progress, and I hope that maybe even in less than 10 years' time, that you will come back to Aerotime, give us an update on the progress that's being made, and hopefully by then we'll even be able to travel, meet in person and do this, and hopefully at some point, maybe towards the end of the decade, we can travel to meet each other, even on a zero carbon vehicle. I think that would be something that we would all love to aim towards. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing for this project and this really, really important work. So Debbie, thank you very much for joining Aerotime today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
That brings us to the end of this Aerotime interview, but we will be publishing a range of articles and interviews marking International Pilots Day this week, because we want to recognise and celebrate the contribution and the success of pilots in our sector. Thank you for joining us here. My name is Richard Stevenson, and you've been watching Aerotime. Goodbye.